Dale Earnhardt Jr. going to Hendrick Motorsports seemed like a match made in heaven. The most popular driver in NASCAR, going to the most successful team in NASCAR, right when he seemed poised to enter the prime of his career and become a championship threat year in and year out. Yet depending who you ask, or how you look at it, his time at Hendrick Motorsports could be seen as a disappointment, and a failure to meet the tremendous hype that was centered around his move. However, in reality, it was a tale of two stories. One of frustration and underperformance, and another of triumph and late career success. After 7 years at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, Dale Jr. was looking to take the next step in his Cup Series career and become a consistent championship threat, something he couldn't do with the current state of DEI. Jr., since becoming a full-time driver in 2000, had amassed 17 wins in the top echelon of NASCAR, with his best season coming in 2004, where he won 6 races and was a few mistakes away from potentially winning the championship itself. But seasons where he even had a chance at fighting for the title had come few and far between for Jr. in the 8 car. So when he was set to become a free agent at the end of 2007, it was no surprise that after failed negotiations to have majority ownership of his father's team over stepmother Teresa, along with a decline in performance, that he'd seek out another team to drive for in NASCAR, soon finding a home for the rest of his career.
And so today, it is with great honor to introduce my new boss for 2008, Mr. Rick Hendrick.
Along with himself going to Hendrick, Dale Jr. brought along Tony Eury Jr., who had been his crew chief since late in the 2005 season, and was a son of his longtime crew chief for the beginning of his career, and Tony Eury Sr. Yet so far the duo only have scored 1 victory with each other in 3 seasons, a far cry from the success Jr. had with his father on top of the pit box. Dale Jr. and Hendrick first donned the new 88 on track for the first time during the 2008 Budweiser shootout, driving from 7th to the lead in 6 laps to the roar of 100,000 fans.
Junior to the bottom. There he comes, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Junior Nation. Now we'll be seeing the sea of green waving into grandstands. Dave Blaney helped propel Earnhardt Jr. to the front.
Well, you can bet one thing, and I know that Junior doesn't really feel all this way, but he wanted to get by that 8 car, if he possibly could.
Crowd loves it. Junior, by inches, led that lap.
Jr. went on to lead 46 out of the next 63 laps in the race, and using help from his new teammate Jimmy Johnson, he was able to make the pass for the win late en route to victory lane in his first start with the team, backing this up just a few days later by going out and winning his dual race and carrying this momentum on into the season. Jr. put up 5 top 10s in his first 6 races, including 3 top 5s, with his lone sub-top 10 finish being from an early crash at Fontana that was completely out of his control. Through the first quarter of the season, he sat 3rd in the standings and had led laps in all but 2 races, yet he was still in search for his first points-paying victory in the Cup Series since 2006. However, nearly 2 years to the date of his last win coming at Richmond, he'd be in place to finally end that search at the exact same track, when the dominant driver of the race in Denny Hamlin suffered a tire issue with under 20 laps to go after leading well over 300 laps in the race, putting the 88 out front for the first time all night. He slowly began to drive away from second place Kyle Busch as the laps clicked down, stretching his gap to over a second with 10 laps to go. But it was quickly erased when Hamlin's tire finally gave out, bringing out the caution and bunching the field back together. On the restart, Jr. broke away to an early lead over Busch, yet he'd be quickly reeled back in over the closing laps. And what happens next sets the tone of much of his early Hendrick career.
Side by side down the back straightaway.
Ooh, man, that was tight off turn 2. He's got him. I believe he's got him this time. Oh, he turned him.
No.
Oh, he turned him. No. No.
Now here comes Clint Boyer to take the yellow flag.
Oh, no.
It wouldn't take long after this until things were evened out by the racing gods, because after 3 top 5s in the next 4 races, Dale Jr. went out and won his first ever race at Hendrick.
And you got to say, that's the one good thing about Dale Jr. When he took this ride, he said, look, I'm man enough to take this ride because I know it's all on me. Because we know the Hendricks organization can win races. It's all on me. And that's a big deal for Dale Jr., man. That's a big man that stood up there and took that.
Big deal for Tony Hendrick Jr. too. Those guys made some great calls down there that put him in this position.
Nascar's going to win.
76 races since he last went to victory lane, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. is the winner at Michigan.
That's incredible.
Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, this would be the last win dating over the next 4 years for the 88 team. A shocking outcome to a partnership with so much expectation, hope, and promise. But how did it even get that bad? Well, following his win at Michigan during race 15 of the season, the 88 team was only able to earn 2 top 10s over the next 11 races, a dramatic shift for a team who only had finished outside of the top 10 4 times in the first 15 events of the season. Nonetheless, they still easily made the chase in 2008, with their massive buffer built throughout the early portions of the year, wrapping up the regular season on a high note by getting payback on Kyle Busch for their previous incident at Richmond. However, the final 10 races would be a complete disappointment for a team with championship aspirations, as following a top 5 to start off the chase in New Hampshire, the 88 only managed 2 more top 10s en route to a last place finish in the 2008 chase of 12th. Dale Jr.'s first and second half stats for 2008 would be the complete opposite of each other, and entering 2009, the only goal for the team was to get back to his first half stats from 2008. However, that wouldn't be the case. The 2009 season started off with a tough showing in the Daytona 500, as after Brian Vickers blocked Jr. below the yellow, he'd swiftly come right back up the track into the 83, setting off the big one.
Green flag stops prior to that caution. Boy, Brian Vickers, Dale Earnhardt Jr., that ain't going to work, boys. Vickers hard. Here we go. Kyle Busch, the dominant car of the day, in the wall.
That was wrong.
And 10 cars sliding, slamming into the infield. Jimmy Johnson, totally uncalled for. Totally.
I don't care who you are, that's what's just wrong.
He himself ended the event in 27th place and followed it up the next week with a 39th at Fontana after blowing an engine, before capturing his first top 10 of 10th at Las Vegas in race 3. Fast forward a few weeks, and the 88 team wrapped up the first quarter of the season with a second place showing at Talladega after a wild finish, his first top 5 in what was so far a dreadful season, and his first since the beginning of the chase in 2008. However, one of the most awful stretches of his career was soon set to follow after this race, with finishes of 27th and 27th before the worst showing of his NASCAR tenure during the 2009 Coca-Cola 600. Jr. rolled off the grid in 27th place, and by the competition caution on lap 40, he found himself running in 35th place off pure speed alone, with an ill-handling race car. Crew Chief Tony Hendrick Jr. was tasked to make big swings on the car during this pit stop, in hopes to find any speed on the track. Yet somehow they found themselves in an even worse position, drifting all the way back into the 42nd position off pure speed again, nearly 100 laps into the race, last out of any car that was on the track. He'd ride out the rest of his day in the low 30s and high 40s on the track, eventually concluding the rain-cancelled nightmare race in an astonishing 40th place, driving a Hendrick car. And that would be the final nail in the coffin for the Dale Jr. and Tony Hendrick Jr. crew chief combo.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets a new crew chief. Tony Hendrick Jr. has stepped into the R&D role with the research and development at Hendrick Motorsports. Taking over this week will be Brian Weitzel, serving as crew chief in Dover. However, the formal crew chief will be Lance McGrew, starting next week in Pocono.
You got to make the most popular driver in the sport competitive, so you got to do what you got to do, I guess. Junior doesn't run well, then he's going to be the problem again. So, you know, it's never Junior, it's always a crew chief.
McGrew took over on top of the pit box starting off during race 14 at Pocono, kicking off things with a subpar day spent in the 20s for most of it, before finishing in 27th, as Junior and the 88 team continued to slide over the course of a disastrous summer, finally scoring their first top 10 in nearly 4 months with a 3rd place run at Michigan, and backing it up the next week with a 9th place at Bristol. The 88 team missed the chase by 624 points in 21st, rounding out the final 10 races of 2009 with 0 top 10s and only 1 top 15 finish, having a few good showings sprinkled in, but never being able to close it out. While his Hendrick teammates concluded 2009 by finishing 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in the standings, Junior wrapped up his sophomore season 25th in the standings, his worst season by all measures in his career, and a complete disappointment for him, Hendrick Motorsports, and everyone involved. However, after a season that bad, there was nowhere left to go but up for the 88 team, albeit a slow climb there. 2010 kicked off with an immaculate drive during the final restart of the Daytona 500, going from 10th to 2nd to begin his season with a much needed hot start, and he'd carry this into being inside the chase, 8th in the standings, following race night at Talladega. However, they soon became very inconsistent, finishing outside of the top 20 3 times in the next 5 races, with his other finishes being just 18th and 19th. By the halfway point of 2010, Junior sat 11th in the standings, 47 points ahead of teammate Mark Martin, with only 8 races left to the chase, yet the team completely collapsed following this race, going on to earn just 1 top 15 over the next 8 weeks, and dropping all the way down to 19th in the standings, soon wrapping up his season with just 2 more top 10s, bringing his grand total to 2 top 10s over the last half of the 2010 season, another disappointing end to a year. Dale Jr. slightly improved on his 2009 season on all fronts in 2010, yet still had no wins, no chase appearance, and no momentum, entering year 4 of his contract at Hendrick. But behind the scenes, something was changing with this struggling team, and that change would come via new crew chief, as Steve Letarte would transfer over from atop the 24 pit box of Jeff Gordon over to the 88 to try and bring life to the struggling race team. By 2011, Dale Jr. was longing for a positive and consistent season to straighten out his disastrous start to his Hendrick tenure, and that's exactly what he'd get. Beginning the season with he and his new crew chief Steve Letarte immediately sitting on the pole for the Daytona 500. However, after suffering a practice crash during the week of the race and being forced into a backup car, they'd start the race at the rear of the field, rounding out the day in 24th place after a late crash on a green-white checkered, after a strong showing all day. The team quickly put up solid runs immediately after this race, posting consistent finishes of 10th, 8th, 11th, and 12th, before finally once again having a chance to win a cup race, after taking the lead from Kyle Busch with 20 to go at Martinsville.
He's got a nose, he's got a look, he's got a look.
Can Busch give him room?
Yes.
No, they touch it, and Junior gets the lead.
Oh, that's not going to be not a happy camper.
And the crowd goes wild. I was going to say, Kyle Busch may not be a happy camper. About 90,000 people are right now here at Martinsville.
Dale Jr. continued to lead the race throughout the closing laps. However, the closer Kevin Harvick was slowly reeling him in, being right on his bumper with 5 laps left. Jr. was driving the car to its limit to try and find any speed to hold off Harvick for the final few laps, before eventually stepping too far over that limit and slipping up through turns 3 and 4, giving Harvick all he needed to take the lead and the win away.
Gonna give up, here he comes back! Junior crosses under, he's got the inside. Eases into the corner, gives Harvick a bump.
Oh, Junebug.
But Harvick sticks to the bottom and holds Junior a car length back, 3 laps to go.
While heartbreaking for the 88 team and its fans, the Martinsville race showed they had winning speed on a non-superspeedway for the first time in years, carrying this momentum over into a top 10 the next week at Texas, and pushing his teammate Jimmy Johnson to the win at Talladega, and one of the closest finishes in NASCAR history. A few weeks later, the sport ran their annual 600-mile race of the year at Charlotte, and at the track that Dale Jr. ran the worst race of his career at just 2 years prior, he'd find himself once again at the doorstep of victory lane, taking the lead with 2 to go on the final restart after leader Casey Kane ran out of fuel going through the gears. Junior and many others up front were all gambling on fuel, and once the 88 took the white flag with a massive gap to 2nd and 3rd place, it was a matter of if his fuel tank had enough for 1.5 more miles.
7 back. Harvick 3rd, Reagan 4th, Logano 5th. What a topsy-turvy finish to the Coca-Cola 600.
And Dale Jr. is scooting away. Uh-oh, he's slowing, isn't he?
150,000 people on their feet.
Junior is slowing, he's out of fuel. He's out of gas.
Out of gas. And as at Indy, the leader at turn 4 does not get to the flag. Harvick, the closer, wins it. Once again, where did he come from?
Golly gee.
Have you ever?
No, I have. Once again, never.
Again, it was the closer and Kevin Harvick who would triumph over Dale Jr. and he'd be forced to finish second the next week to Brad Keselowski at Kansas, who played the fuel game perfectly and stretched his gas all the way to the win. After race 13, he sat third in the standings, and his stats were a complete 180 to 2009 and 2010, as he and Steve Letarte were proving quickly that they were a phenomenal pairing with each other. However, the same thing that had bit Junior in each of his first 3 Hendrick seasons happened again in 2011, when he'd suffer a brutal summer stretch during the race to make the chase, as the 88 team only earned 2 top 10s from the 14th race at Pocono, which was one of them, to the 26th race at Richmond, nearly leaving him outside of the chase. But after his 16th place at Richmond to round out the regular season, he was able to advance through into the chase for the first time since his debut season at Hendrick in 2008. The chase started off well for the 88, earning a 3rd place finish at Chicago after a fuel gamble to set the stage, yet the next 5 races swiftly took him out of contention, with finishes of 17th, 24th, 14th, 19th, and finally 25th, leaving him 74 points out of the lead with 4 races remaining. And while Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart tied for the championship, Dale Jr. wrapped up a bounce-back 2011 campaign 7th in the standings, his best mark since joining Hendrick, and sending him into 2012 with momentum for the first time in what was a long while. Dale Jr. began his 2012 campaign by collecting his 2nd runner-up in the last 3 years in the Daytona 500, following this with leading 70 laps at Las Vegas and finishing inside the top 10, along with back-to-back 3rd place finishes at Fontana and Martinsville. Over the next 8 weeks, the 88 team finished outside of the top 10 just one single time, entering the 15th race of the season at Michigan poised to finally break through for a win. At a newly repaved Michigan, the speeds were absolutely insane, with Junior qualifying in 17th at just over 200 miles per hour. However, what they lacked in pure qualifying speed on the new surface, they made up for in race pace, as by lap 70, he had driven his way through the field on what was basically a 1-lane track and taken the lead. Dale Jr. proved to be dominant after getting clean air, leading most of the second half of the race and cruising to his first win in 143 races at the same track he had last won at 4 years ago.
Here to see these people in the grandstands and to hear them. We're up here in the TV booth and you can hear these people.
Junior down the back straightaway and into turn 3 for the final time. There is going to be a party in Junior Nation tonight.
Pretty-by win is one, hell yeah.
The streak is over. Dale Earnhardt Jr. back to victory lane in Michigan.
Good help, Joe. Thanks. I don't want to say.
Following his win, the 88 team entered a summer stretch that normally had derailed them, yet this time, they were able to stay afloat, earning 3 top 5 finishes of 4th over 5 races through the halfway point, only being derailed by barely being involved in a last lap pileup coming to the line at Daytona, which left him 15th and took him out of position for another top 5. During this impressive run, Junior was able to take the points lead after the Brickyard 400, the first time he had sat atop the standings since after New Hampshire in September of 2004. This impressive stretch was only slowed down by a transmission failure at Pocono while running second, leaving him 32nd, and a 20th place finish at Watkins Glen on a road course after spinning out late while running in the top 10, a type of track he had notoriously struggled at throughout his career. Dale Jr. easily made the chase after wrapping up the 2012 regular season 2nd in the standings, the highest of the 4 Hendrick cars. Yet this wouldn't translate into postseason success, as well as teammate in the 40 of Jimmy Johnson immediately went to battle with Brad Keselowski for the championship. Jr. was left in the dust, sitting 39 points out of the lead 3 races in, 7th in the standings, before entering a pivotal race at Talladega to try and turn things around. Since a tandem drafting era had come around in NASCAR at superspeedways, Dale Jr. had struggled at the tracks he had once dominated at, as at Daytona and Talladega, it was either boom or bust for the 88, and at Talladega he'd be involved in a last lap pileup while running in the middle of the pack, ending his championship chances and leaving him with some choice words to say about this type of racing after the crash.
I can't believe that nobody's sensible enough to realize just how ridiculous that was. I mean, that is ridiculous. If this was what we did every week, I wouldn't be doing it. I'll just put it to you like that. this is how we raced every week, I'd find another job. It's bloodthirsty if that's what people want. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't even want to go Daytona or Talladega next year, but I ain't got much choice. It's really not racing. I don't know. It's just it's a little disappointing how that all went down. That was ridiculous. It was like cost a lot of money right there. It's just a lot of wasted. I mean, if this is how we're going to race and that's how we're going to continue to race, and nothing's going to change, I think NASCAR ought to build the cars, save us a lot of money.
These comments can partially be attributed to him suffering a concussion prior to the interview, as just a few days following the event, it was announced that Dale Jr. would miss the next few races after he had suffered his second concussion in the last few weeks, his first being during a testing crash at Kansas in late August. This would be the first set of Cup races Dale Jr. wasn't a part of since back in 1999, having Regan Smith fill in for him. And once Jr. came back, he'd earned 2 top 10s in his final 4 starts to close out the season. 2012 was by far the best year he had put together at Hendrick, despite missing a few races, finally showing the potential that he had on the team. However, a new generation of car for 2013 was soon on the horizon to change things up, and it'd be key for Jr.'s future to adapt well to this car. NASCAR's Generation 6 sought out to re-put the stock in stock car racing, making the cars as close to their on-street counterparts as possible, and to start things off in its debut, it had one of the worst Daytona 500s in memory, with long single-file packs most of the day, and mostly boring racing. Dale Jr. wound up with his 3rd runner-up finish in the last 4 years in this race, driving from 4th to 2nd down the backstretch, yet not having enough to make a run on teammate Jimmie Johnson for the win. He'd continue on his incredible 2012 with a stellar start throughout the early portions of 2013, having no finish worse than 7th after the first 5 weeks, which slotted him first in the standings. Yet he'd suffered damage early in a crash at Martinsville the next week, relegating him to a 24th place run and dropping him out of the points lead. The 88 wouldn't have quite as much speed as they did compared to 2012 for the first part of the season, but nevertheless they were still a very competitive top 10 race team in the sport, as they easily slotted into the chase with a very consistent regular season performance. However, after a blown engine in Chicago to begin their hunt for a championship, he found himself dead last on the chase grid after race 1. Yet after this, he put together an incredible last 9 races to finish off his season, posting 2 runner-ups at Dover and Talladega, and only having 1 finish outside of the top 10, coming in 15th, allowing him to finish inside the top 5 of the standings for the first time since 2006 and 5th. Looking at the graph comparing Dale Jr.'s finishes to the top 2 in the standings of Jimmie Johnson and Matt Kenseth, it's not a far reach to say without his troubles at Chicago, he could have been in the championship battle until the last bit of racing in 2013, leaving the season as one of the teams to look out for in 2014. Before the year could fire off, it was announced that the crew chief that righted the 88 team and saved the sinking ship was going to retire at the end of 2014, as Steve Letarte was set to transfer over into the role of TV broadcaster for NBC. With one last go of it, Steve Letarte and Dale Jr. set out to have one last stellar season as a duo. However, they'd end up doing much more than that. The breakthrough moment of 2014 quickly arrived in the Daytona 500, when after finishing runner-up so many times in the prior years, he'd finally come through and capture his second 500 victory, immediately setting the tone for the year.
You know what, Larry? I believe that tape's going to stay on there, and that baby's going to come home a winner.
Denny Hamlin has not lost a race this week. He's number 11. Keselowski, the 2012 champ, battling back to the top. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., the Pied Piper of Daytona, trying to hold them all at bay.
And Kyle Busch was trying to make a 3rd line at the top of the racetrack.
Boy, here they come. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We've seen a lot of passes off turn 4 to the start-finish line, but that 88 is pulling away.
Less than a mile to go.
Oh, we got a wreck.
3rd generation star, Dale Earnhardt Jr. brings him to the flag. Checkered flag waving. It's over. It's Earnhardt.
Good job, Junebug!
Dale Jr. backed this popular victory up by spending the entire day inside the top 5 at Phoenix for race 2, eventually finishing runner-up. And at Las Vegas for the 3rd race of the season, he found himself once again in prime position to take home the checkered flag, after staying out on the final caution flag and attempting to make it on fuel. However, just like the Coca-Cola 600 a few years prior, they'd be unable to stretch it all the way on gas.
All right, which lane? Junior up high, Keselowski middle.
But he knows he keeps getting that good run on the high side off of 2.
But Keselowski closes.
Oh, he's out.
He's got the draft, and Junior is out of gas.
3/4 of a lap, you're out.
Oh,
it's back running though. It's back running. It's probably not. It's going to keep surging on it.
Yeah. Okay.
And Brad Keselowski comes off the corner. Hole in one for the captain. Checkered flag for Keselowski.
Wow.
What a weekend.
3 straight top 2 finishes to begin the year was an incredible start for them, soon earning a 3rd place finish at Martinsville a few weeks later to shoot him into the points lead early in the season. However, it'd be a short-lived experience, as a scary crash early at Texas after hitting the rain-soaked grass left him in dead last and dropped him down to 6th in the points. It wouldn't take long for Junior to have another chance at a victory though, as he found himself once again leading a race with 2 to go at Darlington, this time after taking the lead from his teammate on the restart just before the yellow came out. Gas wasn't going to be an issue this time around for the 88, however tires would be, as he'd be no match for Kevin Harvick once again of all people, who had 4 fresh tires and a dominant car to blow right around him on the outside, leaving Junior with another runner-up finish. His 3rd in 8 races to start 2014, and his 6th in the last 16 Cup races ran, making them one of the hottest NASCAR teams as the series was about to head into the summer. June started off with a solid top 10 run at Dover, and the next week at Pocono, luck would be on their side for what seemed like the first time in a long time, at the expense of Brad Keselowski, who was able to steal one over Junior at Las Vegas when he ran out of gas. Keselowski dominated for much of the race at Pocono, yet in the closing laps while Junior was running in 2nd, he'd get a piece of debris stuck on his grille in the lead, quickly sending his temps to the point of nearly blowing up. Needing a way to get rid of this debris and cool his car down before his engine grenaded, he'd elect to get behind the lap car of Danica Patrick to try and use the air to remove the debris. However, Danica got loose in turn 1 at the worst time for Keselowski and forced him to slow down much more than anticipated at a track all about momentum, giving the lead to Dale Jr. with just a few laps left, who'd be able to hold off Keselowski's attempts at retaking the lead for his 2nd win of 2014. To show just how fast the 88 was this season, Dale Jr. went out at Sonoma a few weeks later and earned a career-best 3rd place finish at the track, which also happened to be his first top 10 there in his career, and his 3rd on a road course in general throughout his 15 years of Cup racing. The 88 carried on with this hot stretch through the summer, with just 1 finish outside of the top 10 through races 13 to 21, and in the midst of this, it was announced who would take over as the crew chief for Steve Letarte in 2015, with Chase Elliott's crew chief in the Nationwide Series Greg Ives, who was hired by Junior, getting the promotion up to the Cup Series. The schedule sent them back to Pocono just 6 weeks after their last visit. I really can't believe they used to have to do that. And he'd be presented with an opportunity to repeat his win, making the pass for the lead on Greg Biffle with 14 laps remaining, putting him out front for the first time all race. Junior was once again forced to battle with Harvick for a race win, who had suffered damage earlier in the race in a pileup, yet was still hounding Junior during the closing laps. But this time it'd be Dale Jr. finally coming out on top in a battle between the drivers.
Nice corner by Junior. One more turn. Can he hold him off? He's going to do it. 3rd win of the season. Pocono goes to Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Hell yeah. Good job. Man, it's rolling.
Junior entered the first running of the playoffs tied with his teammates Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon for 2nd in the standings, as well as Joey Logano, posting 3 solid finishes over the first run to put him into the round of 12, where the dream season for Junior would shred apart, with a strong run at Kansas to start off the round getting ruined by him blowing a tire while leading the race, leaving him in 39th place, and in a playoff era without any true playoff points to be earned for a buffer, he found himself 25 points below the cut line after this, going into Charlotte in desperate need of a good finish. He'd roll off the grid in 9th place, spending the first part of the race inside the top 10 while cutting his points deficit down to 11. However, while running inside the top 10, his shifter would break off in his hand, forcing the 88 to make multiple pit stops under yellow to fix it, and making them relinquish all their track position. The race soon went green for the next 78 laps, being a death sentence to them after they had to restart at the tail end of the field, soon being lapped by the leader Kevin Harvick and being unable to get back onto the lead lap, leaving Junior 20th in the race and 26 points behind Casey Kane on the cutoff line, entering the wildcard race at Talladega, in a must-win situation to save his season. But with 20 to go, he'd find himself stuck on the outside lane with no help to get to the front, drifting towards the back of the pack. Attempt after attempt to get to the front of the field all failed, eventually restarting the race 13th with 9 to go, after a Kyle Larson spin during green flag pit stops reset everything. But being trapped on the inside proved to be a detriment for him on the restarts, having nowhere to go while the field raced 3 wide around him, soon setting him up to restart 16th for the first attempt at a green-white checkered, where his season came to an end down the backstretch. Now with only the goal left on the season of winning, Dale Jr. entered a track he'd always wanted to win at in his career in Martinsville, yet had been unable to do so despite coming so close. But after taking the lead with under 50 laps remaining, he found himself right in position to finally win there, until a caution with 12 laps left threw a wrench in those plans. The field went on a split strategy, with the 88 electing for 4 tires along with the 24 in second place, restarting them 5th and 7th for a 5-lap shootout for the win. Junior quickly went 3 wide down the backstretch to slip into second on the restart, and by the time they got back to turn 3 a lap later, he was on Tony Stewart's bumper for the lead, making quick work of him and driving up to his 4th win of 2014.
Checkered flag and his first Martinsville win. Dale Earnhardt Jr. takes it over Jeff Gordon.
To close a standout season, they'd earned 3 more solid finishes over the last 3 weekends, rounding out 2014's 8th in the standings, or 4th with no playoffs. Although he didn't win the championship, the season was still special in many ways, earning his first multi-win season since his breakout 2004, while also earning his second Daytona 500. It truly was the first time at Hendrick where everything clicked for him over a season, something 7 years in the making for the duo. 2015 began like any other year for Dale Jr. Another podium finish in the Daytona 500, finishing 3rd in the 500 and carrying that speed into 3 top 5s in the next 6 races, before heading into Talladega a few weeks later, a track he hadn't won at since all the way back in 2004. However, the Talladega fans were soon in for a treat, when Dale Jr. went back to victory lane there for his first win of 2015.
Bring it to the house.
Menard to the bottom with Blaney. Junior trying to hold everybody off.
Come on, Blaney, you got one more shot. You can do it.
Earnhardt, Johnson, Menard, Blaney. Double wide behind them. 4 cars to settle it. Earnhardt trying to cover all spots. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Checkered flag at Talladega.
2 more top 3 finishes into the summer proved they were a title contender this season, jumping up to 2nd in the regular season standings after he'd captured his 2nd win of 2015, this time coming at Daytona with a horrific crash in his mirror at the line, leading to NASCAR soon changing their green-white checkered rules to 1 attempt instead of 3, something that ended up playing a huge role later in the season. Dale Jr. finished up the regular season 3rd in the standings as the highest placed Hendrick car, and he'd go on to make his 5th straight NASCAR postseason. Yet he immediately faced a challenge to make it out of the round of 16 after a 12th place run at Chicago and a 25th at New Hampshire, following him being forced to pit from just outside the top 10 late in the race for fuel, left him just 1 point above the cut line heading into Dover. However, the 88 team persevered after running outside the top 12 in points all race, passing the one of Jamie McMurray with 24 to go around the outside on a restart to eventually send him into the next round and a tie for the last transfer spot. However, he wouldn't be so lucky the next time around. because in the round that followed, he'd find himself in a must-win situation for the second year in a row at Talladega, after 2 issues in the races prior set him up to be 31 points behind Martin Truex Jr. Nevertheless, he'd do the opposite of what happened in 2014, and run up front for most of the day, doing exactly what was needed, leading 61 laps and finding himself in second place for the lone green-white checkered attempt, going up against Joey Logano, who had already won the first 2 races of the round and was looking for the first ever sweep of a playoff round. The field would roll up to the restart zone, yet before they could even make it to the start-finish line to take the green flag, the caution was waived, and NASCAR deemed it a non-official green-white checkered, giving Jr. one more attempt to save his season. Around this time, Kevin Harvick became aware of a problem with his car while he was just barely in the next round, and instead of pitting, he'd choose to restart in the middle of the pack, hoping to create a caution before he fell below the cut line.
Green flag back in the air. The 4 not going. They wreck behind him. The green flag is out as they cross the start-finish line. Will they throw the caution? Trying to get back up to speed. Caution comes out. Now the question is, who was in front?
Stay in front of them. Stay in front of them.
As the dust settled from everything, Dale Jr. was left in second place by just a fender, never even getting a chance to fight for the win, and depending how you look at it, things became bittersweet following Dale Jr. returning back to victory lane at Jeff Gordon Raceway, or Phoenix, a few weeks later in a rain-shortened win. A win that would have sent him into the Final Four had he been out in front at the moment of yellow in Talladega.
But myself, if I had 4 or 6 inches at Talladega, I'd be going to Homestead, racing for a championship too. So we're all, it works out for some and some it doesn't.
This one would be the final taste of victory lane for Dale Jr. in the Cup Series, soon rounding out 2015 with an early crash at Homestead, which relegated him to a 12th place points finish and 4th without any playoffs, the same as 2014. Another strong season in the books for him, and just like that, the page turned on to 2016. Now 41 years old, and entering his second year with crew chief Greg Ives, things were going as expected through the first 8 races of 2016, as although he wouldn't finish inside the top 3 in the Daytona 500, following a rare solo crash by himself at a plate track, Jr. still wound up with 3 second place finishes over the next 7 weeks. Yet after that point, his season took a turn, finishing outside of the top 10 in every race over the next 5 weeks, but ending that streak with a second place finish at Pocono, before 4 more finishes in a row outside the top 10 followed. In the midst of this stretch, he'd wreck out in the middle of the race at Michigan, and after a few races, it was soon discovered that he'd suffered a concussion from the incident, subsequently forcing him to miss races for the second time in his Hendrick tenure. This time, however, he wouldn't be back after just 2 weeks.
The reason why we decided to make this decision to not race anymore, but I think it's the right decision considering how I feel personally and physically. I definitely don't belong in a race car today by any stretch of the imagination, and you don't know how long this process is going to take.
The concussion ended up sidelining him all the way through into early December, cutting his season short with just 18 races completed while he was 13th in the standings, giving a young Alex Bowman the chance of a lifetime to make a name for himself in the series. Entering 2017, it was the final year of his contract with Hendrick Motorsports, and things quickly fell off the wagon, as it was evident that the team was not at their peak anymore, earning just 1 top 10 finish in the first 11 races, while sitting an abysmal 24th in the standings. However, it was soon revealed that this would be the last full-time season on his resume, announcing his retirement at the end of the 2017 season, late in April.
You're wondering why I reached this decision? It's really simple. I just wanted the opportunity to go out on my own terms. I wanted to honor my commitment to Rick, to my sponsors, to my team, and to the fans. I'll admit that having influence over my exit only became meaningful when it started to seem most unlikely. As you know, I missed a few races last year, and during that time I had to face the realization that my driving career may have already ended without me as so much getting a vote at the table. Of course, in life we're not promised a vote, and that's especially true in racing.
Dale Jr.'s best moments for the rest of the season ended up coming at the tracks he had the most success at in his career, at Daytona and Talladega, earning poles in both of his final races at each track, and even having a chance to win at Talladega, yet it wouldn't come to fruition. Dale Earnhardt Jr. completed his final Cup race with a 25th place run at Homestead, closing the book on an incredible career. Outside of his driving career, his legacy still continues to grow in the sport, being one of the most vocal figures NASCAR has to try and change the sport for the better, as well as being one of the best broadcasters they have to offer. So was Dale Jr. the true race-winning and championship threat that Rick Hendrick hoped he'd get in 2007 when he signed him? No. Does that mean the signing was bad? No. The early years were rocky for the pairing, as with crew chief changes, seasons ending with disappointment while his teammates thrived, and a massive 4-year winless streak. However, Jr. ended up becoming a fine wine for them as the years wore on, with him and Steve Letarte putting together strong season after strong season, consistently performing as one of the best teams in the garage. So when you look back at Dale Jr.'s time with Hendrick, you should look at it as a tale of two stories. In one, there was a story of struggle and disappointment, and of expectations that he failed to meet week in and week out. But on the other side, there was a story of a resurgence that reminded the NASCAR world of just how talented Dale Jr. had always been, and of him becoming one of the most consistent and competitive drivers in the garage.
Nothing that racing has given me will ever top this night. The people enshrined in this building, they're my role models, and they're my heroes, and one of them happens to be my father. So to join Dad in the Hall of Fame is probably as good as it's ever going to get.